Okay. All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. This is our first webinar of 2026. I'm Ann Yasalanis. I'm with UFI Physics Extension in Polk County, Florida, so right in Central Florida. And my co-chair for webinars is Ashley Bodkin. She's from University of Maryland Extension. She's not able to be here today, so I will try to run this by myself. But as you go through, if you have questions, we'll type them in the chat and we'll get your questions from there. Just to remind everyone, we do have a webinar schedule. So when you went in and registered for this one, hopefully you registered for all of the webinars in 2026. We have a lot of really nice ones coming up, and you can see here in April, we have University of California presenting Gardeners with Heart. We have a really cool one on using community capitals framework from University of Florida in June. August, we actually have open still. So if you are interested in presenting anything or have some good ideas, we have that spot open for you. And then October, we're going to talk about our National Extension Master Gardener impacts. And December is also open as well. So think about it. If you're interested in presenting, those 2 dates are open. But otherwise, we hope you join us for all of the webinars this year. If anyone has any announcements, you're welcome to email them ahead of time to myself or to Ashley, and we will add them into the presentation. You're also welcome to share them in the chat too, and I can announce those. We do have a couple of them. Hopefully everyone saw that the National Extension Master Gardener Conference now has a website. So if you scan the QR code there on the screen, it will take you to the conference website. And there are presentation proposals that are due in April. So if you're interested in presenting on anything, that information is on the website as well. We are looking for presenters still, like I mentioned, for those August and December dates. So this is our contact information if you would like to present. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing here and we'll go ahead and, let me quickly do I forgot, sorry, our poll so we can self-identify and grab some information. Polls, let's see. Sorry, normally Ashley does this, and why is this not working? There we go. Okay. There we go. Okay, so if you would go ahead and self-identify, that way our speaker has all of this information. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. While Katie's pulling up her screen. So we'll have Katie introduce herself, and just so you know, we'll take any questions, comments, or anything about the presentation. You can hold them to the end if you want to not forget what your question is. Go ahead and type it in the chat, and we'll wait to the end, and I can go back and pull all of those for Katie when she's done presenting. But we do, appreciate conversation and questions at the end because we do record this. Okay, so thanks for everyone for participating. I will end the poll, and I will pass it on over to Katie.
Thanks, Ann. Appreciate it. Hey, everyone. Thanks for being here live, and thanks to anyone who's watching the recording. My name is Katie Dunker. I serve as the Director of Learning Innovation for Extension Programs. That title alone may not place me in the Master Gardener program, so let me give you a little bit of history. I started with CSU Extension about 9 years ago, 8.5 years ago, as a county coordinator and fiscal officer in the local county where I lived. Jumped in the Master Gardener program, don't have a horticulture background, more of a higher education administrator. And within a couple of years, found myself in the state director program leader position for the Master Gardener program. And it was during that 5 years that I served as director of the Master Gardener program for Colorado that I learned about the Extension Master Gardener National Committee and jumped right in. So I served at least 2 years as the Southwest Regional Rep. and then jumped into the communications committee that I still serve on, and also the impacts and data committee, which I'm currently serving on as well. I've also been vice chair, chair, and past chair for the Extension Master Gardener National Committee. So I'm a big fan of the work that you all do, and I'm still connected to the Master Gardener program here in Colorado. So I do work at CSU Extension. I'll be sharing some examples of some of the work that I've been doing around impact reporting. Not a new topic to me, but I'll also be honest that it didn't rise to the level of something I worried about or was too involved in until about 3 years ago. And my boss at the end of the year said, hey, we don't have any impacts for Colorado in the National Impact Database. Could you write one? Is anyone willing to write one? And I thought, well, we've got tons of data and tons of great stories to share about the Master Gardener program. I'm sure I could put something together. So she gave me an example. She pulled one from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. It was pretty simple and straightforward. So I kind of mimicked the structure of the impact report example I had and threw something together. And that's where my impact reporting journey began. So very humble. Didn't know what I was doing, submitted the first impact report for the state of Colorado, which is sad. That's not something to brag about. I didn't know what the impact database was. And some of you might be in the same shoes that I was. And just looking at the number of submissions that have tagged Master Gardener, it's low. So I think we have got some work to do, and I'm hoping that this session, which is really focused on, learn to write compelling results-driven impact reports that stand out. And my goal is that this webinar will give you the tools and resources to get started or to improve your existing skills to demonstrate impact. So let's jump in here. And I like to add that it doesn't have to be painful. This really impact reporting might sound scary and big, and it's actually pretty simple and straightforward. So I'm hoping that this webinar will demonstrate just that. And just like your institutions, Colorado State University is an equal opportunity organization. You can scan our QR code to learn more about our accommodations. All right, so the agenda for today, we really want to keep it simple. So I'm going to share the priority areas that are established each year. And we'll talk about the 4 keys to impact reporting. And I will share some tips for writing great ones. So hopefully you'll be able to walk away with a solid start on your next impact report through this clear guidance on how to make your work shine. So I want to start by sharing an aerial photo of our CSU annual flower trial gardens. It's spectacular. It's one of my favorite places. It's, I think, the top destination for tourism in the city of Fort Collins, where our Colorado State University main campus is. There's an incredible array of colors, flowers, and diversity of work at play here. And this is like the big picture of your work, right? Drone footage of your work. It's that 10,000 foot view of all the things that you do. And you might be thinking, how do I possibly narrow my work down and choose one flower, one educational offering or program to write about? Another way of thinking about this that I recently was introduced to, and I felt like it just totally hit the mark for me, was, do you ever feel like you just have too many tabs open? Like it's hard to prioritize what you need to be doing because you're stuck chasing emails, questions, meetings, reporting, all the things. It's like having too many tabs open. And impact reporting requires you to really close the tabs or select one tab, prioritize and truly zoom in on where your work is making a real difference. So my thought for you as we spend the next 40 minutes together talking about impact reporting, I want you to personalize this. So close the tabs, take a step back from your daily hustle and consider, What's one project I'm really proud of in the last year? Or what's one project I'm super excited about that's coming up this year? The beauty of this presentation being in early February is that you have this whole calendar year ahead of you. And so it's a perfect time to be thinking about impact reporting because you want to set up a project, a program, data collection to be able to tell your story at the end of this year or sooner. You don't have to wait till the end of this year. If you've got work that you can think about for 2025 and you want to write an impact report now, you can do that. I guarantee you your extension administration will be thrilled to have some data now. So think about that one project you're proud of or excited about, and where has your work really aligned to community needs or university priorities? Maybe that's a place that you need to focus. Where has your work really, just hit the mark? Where do you have data to demonstrate that you've made an impact? And if you're still left wondering, I don't know where to start, perhaps you flip these questions to where you want to work and want to meet the moment. What do you think is really relevant? What's on trend right now that you could be customizing your work to meet that moment? So before we dive in, we want you to make this personal. All right, step away to zoom in. Pick one flower, one tab, perhaps one key educational offering that you're thinking you'd like to write an impact report for this year or based on data from last year. Use this program as an example as I go through the 4 components of writing great impact reports. That's it. There's only 4 things to writing impact reports. Like I said, it's actually pretty straightforward, pretty simple. And if you still need to kind of narrow down your focus or you want to start thinking about what your focus could be, we do have guidance from the National Communications team for Extension and the National Impact Database. So each year they set usually around November, December, I think November, they'll set these high priority topic areas. And if they're setting them at the end of the year, that means you don't have time to utilize those, right? Like you've already done the work or you haven't. They don't change much though, year to year, tweaks here and there. And let me go through some of these because I think you are going to find yourself in them. So some of the high priority areas, you can look at the website to find the full list of all of them, but I've kind of picked out ones that I think really match probably your work in the Master Gardener program and horticulture in general. So think about food security and how that maybe overlaps with emerging pests and diseases. Rural community vitality, we're seeing a big emphasis in rural work. So think about the work that you might be doing there to support economic development or food desert, alleviation of food deserts, et cetera. Public health, that's a huge topic. You might be doing work with some of your colleagues in this. So think about how maybe some of your work is meeting that. Environmental solutions, this is a slam dunk for most of what we all do. So consider those options. AI, are you doing anything innovative around emerging technologies in your programming? Consider that. I know like soil moisture sensors and database work, dashboard work could all fit within this. Workforce development and readiness, we're seeing a huge emphasis on this. And while a lot of your work is probably aligned to communities and HOAs and residents and homeowners and property managers, et cetera, you probably are hitting the mark too in terms of your industry connections and work. And so some of your educational outreach might really fit in here. Positive youth development, that's obviously our friends and neighbors in 4-H, but are you doing work that overlaps with them and you could write something collectively together? And then, oops, I went a little fast there. And then the last one is water resilience and management. And while many of us think about that in the West and being dry, which we're very dry right now here in Colorado, the flip side of that, many of you are also experiencing, which is too much water, flooding and whatnot. So think about the work that you're doing. And if any of them align to these, you might want to select that for an impact report. Now, I've said pick one. If you're working in multiple areas or you have a team of folks, you certainly can write more than one. And I think once you find how simple these are, you might find yourself compelled to write more than one. All right, and then this is the ever-present question. I'm already doing a lot, and people already know what we do. Okay, I get that, but do they? And do you have a concise way of sharing your value? I think that's really part of the benefit of impact reporting is that it's concise, it's clean, and it's really targeted. So I know you're juggling a lot. I'm going to give you some tools to make this a little bit easier, so hang in there. There's another reason why this is important for us as university extension services. As a federally and state and county funded organization, we are actually on the hook for reporting our impacts. So we have an obligation to report measurable difference that our program makes. So we are required to do this in some way, whether that's through federal reporting, which many of you are already contributing to in your state, or through this impact reporting as well. So we are obligated to make sure the public has access to what we're doing. And impact statements, the beauty of them is that they kind of show public accountability and they demonstrate your response to an issue or collaboration. So we're accountable and transparent, right? Let's demonstrate how we respond to local issues and needs through impact reports, which are brief, digestible, and provide clear return on investment for our stakeholders. A bonus, because kind of maybe this is like the what's in it for you, is that impact reports can do more. They can easily be incorporated into our federal reports. And so if you write it, folks can use it. And that brevity is really useful in showing return on investment and can support future funding requests. So let me give you the three kind of upshots and the what's in it for you is that number one, impact statements, impact reports fulfill state and federal reporting requirements. Number two, they can help you get noticed both internally with your own administration and your own stakeholders and your county level stakeholders and state level stakeholders. They can help you get published because these are published on a national website database if your impact reports are submitted and selected. And they can help you get seen. And ultimately, that could mean that you either secure new funding or you stay funded as a result. Better yet, you can also grow your funding through grants, maybe grow your team even by bringing in additional funding. And you could expand your reach. There may be people that just didn't know what you were up to, and you may be able to expand your reach by scaling what are great programs. So consider these. There's definitely a need for impact reports. All right, let's talk about what it actually is. What is an impact report? So three basic things that define an impact report. They are non-technical, all right? They are brief and they share value. That's it. So non-technical. These are not your 12-page glossy reports that your communications team puts together. But they're also not research briefs and they're not including a lot of raw data or scientific language. You need to use plain language. Keep it brief. Typically, they're a page or less in volume, so that's good to know. And the true value of them is around sharing the impact of your work. Okay, that's what the value is the ultimate impact of what you've been working on. Hopefully you've seen the national database before. I know Anne popped in some links in the chat, so you can search around. I encourage you right now during my presentation to search around on the database. There's a lot of information there, but it's also pretty well organized. So I think you'll have fun popping around there, searching impacts. You can see which impacts have been submitted for your state. You can search by Master Gardener as a tag. You can search by a variety of tools, and actually the search is really, really good. So my hope is that at the end of this year, we are filling this national database with a lot of Master Gardener and horticulture impacts because we have them, you have them, let's share them. So as I said, I really do encourage you to search the national database. Spy on your neighbors and colleagues. What are they doing? What are they up to? What are they submitting? poke around and read some of these. They are independently, each state has their own process for how they determine what impact reports are going to make the national database. So you have a different process based on your state. I don't know your process of how it's determined whose entries end up in the national database, but you can probably find out by talking to your administration, your communication team, find out who's submitting these and how you could potentially elevate one of your stories, one of your projects into the national database. I mentioned that when I had to write my first impact report, I literally copied the form and the format of a neighboring institution. I found a good example, one that I felt like hit the mark, and I kind of emulated that format and formula for an impact report, and it worked. Got published, and it's a great strategy actually. Read a lot of these, and you'll get good at writing them too. I want to highlight a couple things. So these are QR codes. I'll have these a couple times in the presentation, just in case you join late and you missed the chat, or you're watching the recording, you don't have access to the chat. So you'll find both featured impacts and the search database link. I think these are the two ones you really want to check out. Every year, they look at, there's a team, a communication extensions professionals team, and they look at all the entries for that previous year. They do this in January, February, and then they will create these featured impact stories. And so the more data and reports that you have in the database for any given year, the more likely it is that your institution and your project or story will be featured in these national impact kind of collaborations and stories that they put together. Now, who's the audience for this reporting database in the National Impact Database? It is primarily communicators that are looking for ways to, there's maybe a hot topic, a priority story, something in the news, and they want to know what is Extension doing on this topic. They will go to the National Impact Database to find examples of who's doing this well. Sometimes they'll reach out to those institutions to learn more and perhaps do a feature story on the work that's happening at that institution. So primarily our audience is USDA NEFA and communication folks across the nation. So it really is a unique audience for Extension to highlight great work. All right, so let's explore how we get to the finished product. As I've mentioned a couple times, there are 4 key elements in a great Extension impact report. And they're really simple. It's relevance, response, results, and a public value statement. So these are the 4 areas that you will have to provide content for. And I'm going to go through each individual one and give some examples that I think will highlight how to do this really well, or just get you thinking about what you might want to write. So relevance is first. You're going to describe the issue or problem that your project or program is addressing. You need to do this pretty succinctly. So I say 3 to 5 sentences. In the past, we've said 2 to 3 sentences. I mean, it's hard to be concise sometimes when you want to cite information and data. But essentially in this relevance section, you want to get to the point and you need to make the case for why. Why and what is the issue or problem that you're solving for with your program? What's the community need? Typically, this is going to include some documented or cited information. So I've gone ahead and selected 3 different examples, one from West Coast, one from East Coast, and one from the middle of the country. Spoiler alert, it's Colorado because I already have that data. And so I just selected 3 examples that are specific to Master Gardener program, so you can see what your colleagues and how your colleagues are messaging Master Gardener impact reports. And this is a screenshot of what it looks like. It's not fancy, it's not glossy. Some of them do have pictures or images, but it's one picture, one image. It's not, like I said, this is not your external annual report where you want to share all the kind of glossy information about your program. These are non-technical briefs. So they're pretty straightforward, black and white, to the point. So here's a good example. And what I'm going to do is actually, I wanted to show you kind of what it looks like on the website in case you're not poking around in there. But then kind of dive in a little bit deeper and highlight a few things that I think are really stellar about these examples and get you thinking about how do I demonstrate relevance for whatever program or project I'm thinking about. So for relevance, consider why does this issue matter? And think of this like a short lit review to support your identification of a key issue that's worthy of an extension response. So for this example from the University of California Extension, this is a recent example. They just submitted it for 2025, so it's a new one. I mean, you can see how they are laying the case here that invasive plants and pests disrupt a lot, including our food supply, right? These are big, high-level issues. They use two different resources, which I really like, highlighting a couple external entities that are going to be very meaningful, I think, to others that are reading it, to say it's not just extension saying that this is an issue. This is not just an extension observation. This is a documented, researched issue in our state. And we're going to try to do something to address this issue. Using numbers is really valuable too. So you can see how they cite 20 million acres of California's wildlands, nearly 1/5 of the state. 20 million acres in and of itself, it sounds big, but California is big. So I don't know what that actually means. I love how they rephrase it and say nearly 1/5 of the state. Wow, that's a lot, right? What could master gardeners do to impact that? So you can see how impactful this in a relatively short amount of space. I mean, it's certainly more than the 5 sentences that I recommended. But get to the point, share some relevant information, and then move on. So in that first section, you are just sharing the basics. I want to share another and highlight an example from North Carolina State University and their extension. They have a project on assisting pollinator research. I like this one. It's very different from the University of California's example. And that's why I wanted to show it, because there's a wide variety. There's not a central group that's determining which impact reports end up in the national database. You're doing this state by state. So there's a lot of variety in what these look like. Let's dive in a little bit closer to this one. So you can see as they're laying the foundation that pollinators have some issues and concerns. We're concerned about the perils that are facing pollinators. And we know that how you manage plants can increase or decrease their value to pollinators. So they're talking about, when do you do that spring cleanup? What do you leave in the fall? Leave alone to overwinter? I know it's hard for me to leave things alone in my own yard. So it was nice to read this one and feel some confirmation that I should leave it and wait. And then current information about when to cut back stems at the end of the growing season is unclear and at times contradictory. And so you can see where they're laying the framework of what the issue is and the relevance for this project to come. What is missing here is probably some citations. So what could strengthen this is citations, which would probably be very easy to find. It seems like they've done their homework, they understand the issue, and they just neglected to cite the resources. So think of it again like a lit review. All right, and then the last example, I also wanted to highlight this. So they at the end kind of pose the research question. And I like, this is applied research, right, that they're doing, led by specialists, but really it's volunteers doing this, likely in home gardens is my guess. And so how should we manage perennial stems to increase the ability of residential landscapes to provide habitat for pollinators? So they pose the question in the relevance section. I really like how they sum that up. Another example is from here in Colorado, the Grow and Give program. A lot of you are doing some work very, very similar. And so this one's highlighting food growing and donation projects. This one was spurred by the 2020 pandemic, but you can see it's pretty simple to find data around this and to be able to cite and make a pretty big case for food insecurity. And I'll make a note that USDA NIFA has started to change from just food security or food insecurity to nutrition security and nutrition insecurity. And I think a lot of the work that we're doing around hyperlocal food donations is often produce or almost always produce, and that would be considered very nutrient dense. And the more hyperlocal it is, the more nutrient dense it is. And so it's really solving a key issue there that USDA has highlighted. All right, another prompt to just make sure you're searching these. If you haven't started, I would get in there. Start seeing what your state has put out there and start finding some examples. So see for yourself and then follow along. All right, so that's the relevance section. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Don't make it too long, get to the point, right? Now for response, you've identified the issue, a relevant issue. Now in response, you're going to describe what you did to impact the issue or meet this community need. So let's look at some examples. And we're gonna follow the same 3 examples. That way you get a sense for how they're building their case. So for the University of California example, they're highlighting that they did a citizen science initiative with their master gardeners. And I did not post the entire example here. If you want to find this one in the database, you can search for it. But they actually go pest by pest. So it's a pretty long impact report. As far as impact reports go, it's a longer one for sure. But I like how they did it because they're framing, they weren't just focused on one emerging pest or issue. They were focused on many, and then they basically highlighted their response for each of these is a little different based on the monitoring that needed to happen or the education that needed to happen and how they were utilizing their volunteers in each. So in this section, you are going to say what you did, right? Just describe the basics of the educational outreach, the applied research project. What did you do to address the issue? For the research, the pollinator research project at NC State, this is a nice example too of they're involving master gardener volunteers, helping them change their management of perennials in the landscape. And this was the first year of the project. And I like how they kind of lay it out. It's almost lending itself to what's going to happen in year 2. I mean, I'm already curious, right? What did they find this year? And then will they repeat it next year to find out, what they did or what the results were? But you can see here, this is what they did, right? It's a good picture of the project, and yet it's pretty simple. It's not too long, right? But they're telling us, okay, they decided to trim and leave 18 inches standing above the ground. And then it says how many they collected after the previous season. For the Grow and Give project, I won't go into all of the things that they did for this project, all of the contributions. It's a lot. But the upshot here, and they put it in the very first sentence, is that ultimately CSU Extension was educating home gardeners in how to grow produce in Colorado while connecting their backyard produce with Coloradans in need, right? So it's helping people grow, helping people give, and how they executed that was a variety of things that I've highlighted here. And so very likely, again, that you have something going on in your state that's similar, and you could write an impact report somewhere along these lines too. All right, so that's the response. You just share what you did. I would say a healthy number of details is great, but don't overdo it. We don't need all the specifics of every little thing or every month or every time you met. Just get to the basics of what you did that probably mattered the most. All right, and then the third piece is results. So how did it go? What did you learn? What were the outcomes of the response that you did and the work that you did? How did your target audience benefit from this work and the activities that you conducted? So for the California example, they talk about how they mobilized the master gardeners. They identified 76,000 trees that were contributing to the spotted lanternfly at more than 5,000 locations statewide. Wow, I mean, that seems like a pretty big impact for volunteer master gardeners to be contributing to. I've cut out some pieces of theirs. Again, their result section was pretty long because they go through each of the different pests and talk about those specifically, what happened. What I want to point out here, though, is that they link to outside studies, and then they include not just data like master gardeners were trained and learned how to identify and report infested trees up to 96% accuracy. It's awesome. That's definitely a good result to share. But they also include some narratives and qualitative data as well, which you are encouraged to do. So I think it's a combination of the quantitative and qualitative here that you want to lay the framework for. This is what happened as a result of this project that we set up. So you can see how this might be beneficial in a grant or other funding application process as well. So one benefit for you of writing impact reports is that then you have a really clear picture to share at any time, and it could help you build a grant narrative or a grant application from this very basic information that you have. All right, looking at the North Carolina example, more than half of the samples Master Gardener volunteers collected contain pollinators or beneficial insects. Wow, okay, 50%, that's a lot, right? So interesting. And then adding these flowering perennials to landscapes, following the recommendations on trimming will maximize benefits for your landscape. So there's a real practical end result that could be communicated and can probably answer a lot of questions that people have about how to support pollinators in their own backyard. And as I said earlier, I mean, aren't you curious what will happen in year 2? I certainly am. And for the Grow and Give project, I mean, this was a cumulative impact report. So you'll see that data is shared across 4 years, 2020, 2021, 22, and 23. So what happened is that we were collecting data, but didn't write a complete impact report until 2023. And so that's an option too. You don't have to submit an impact report or write impact reports every single year for the projects you're doing. But over time, this data could really become valuable just by the accumulation of data year over year. And so we were able to demonstrate that since the beginning of the Grow and Give project in 2020, that we were able to ultimately donate at least a value of over $330,000 to the state of Colorado through hyperlocal food donations. So some of these numbers are really impressive when accumulated all together, right? Okay, and then wrapping it up. So the fourth component of an impact report is the public value statement. So this is really the bigger picture of why this matters. So it's going back to that kind of aerial view shot, right? Why does your program or work in this area matter on a really bigger level? So thinking about general public, why would the general public care about this? And what conjecture can you make for scaling this approach? So perhaps you were just doing one project, one food garden, one educational offering, but you were able to demonstrate a pretty robust response. And in your results section, what could you conjecture that if that program or project was scaled could happen across your entire state? So, and we recognize too that if you don't have measurable or scalable results right now, you can also share that potential for public good, right? What is the potential for this program? And again, kind of conjecture about what that could look like for your state, your community, your region, et cetera. So let's share these public value statements from the examples that we've been working through. You'll notice these are much shorter by design. They're designed to be very simple and kind of just that big picture look at why this work even matters for your state or our country. So for California example of invasive species work, by combining science-based training with deep community roots, volunteers are helping California stay ahead of emerging threats through early detection, mapping, education, and strategic partnerships. Their work is making a measurable difference, protecting ecosystems, supporting agriculture, and empowering Californians with the knowledge to act. That is an excellent summation of the work that they've been doing and the public good, the public value of that work. For the NC State Pollinator Research Project, NC State Extension extends research-based knowledge to all North Carolinians, helping them transform science into everyday solutions that improve their lives and grow our state. Love that. Any of us could probably pipe in our institution here in our state or residence and be able to say the same thing, right? So these are a little more generic, and that's okay, right? Beautiful, short, sweet, big picture thinking here. Finally, I want to share the example of the Grow and Give program. Now, we chose to focus on the ripple effects and the impacts that are happening across local communities. I wrote this many years ago now. I've been doing this work now since, and this is not a very good public value statement. I think it's too specific. And I think it kind of misses the mark of the general public good. So especially talking about the very specific nature of work that was happening at a campus in Denver, I would rewrite this, and I can. So one of the beauties of writing these is that they're not static. So you can go back to whoever is the inputter for your state's national impact database work, and you can say, I want to edit an impact report that's up there, or I want to add to it. I want to update it based on project work that happened this year. So this is a good reminder for me, a very public one, to say, I need to edit this because I don't love it. And I don't think it's really hitting the mark of what the public value was for the Grow and Give project. All right, so that's it. 4 areas here: relevance, response, results, and public values. Nice to have them all displayed in one place. Note that I have updated this to give a little more room for the relevance piece. I think 2 to 3 sentences is probably too concise. So the question is, could you do it? Do you think this is something you could take on to describe the issue or problem, describe what you did to impact it, share how it went, and then share that bigger picture why? Again, keeping this non-technical, brief, with the purpose of sharing value. And I've got a tool for you. So funny, I didn't mention this at the beginning because I don't want you to rely on a ChatGPT AI tool. Some of you may not even agree with utilizing AI for multiple reasons. But a colleague at another institution, and I don't remember exactly where, developed a ChatGPT tool specifically for extension impact reports and statements. I think it's pretty good. It's pretty helpful. So you might want to do some brainstorming or utilize this tool to consider, how you might write something or improve an impact report as well. So I decided as I was building this that I don't like my public value statement, and maybe I'll just throw it into the ChatGPT land grant impact reporter and provided the prompt, improve this public value statement for impact. I popped that in and I got this statement, which I had to change a couple things. So I changed the words in green, talking about food access, community resilience. I think it was community engagement that I changed to volunteer engagement because that was the purpose of this program. And then changed, probably it was like community members or something to Coloradans. All right, I didn't love this one either. So then I did the prompt, simplified this to align with nutrition security as the key impact area, which I'd already mentioned is kind of a buzzword right now and a priority area. And I got something I really like. The Grow and Give program improves nutrition security across Colorado by increasing access to fresh, locally grown produce and practical food growing skills. Through community gardens, hands-on projects, and bilingual garden education, the program helps communities grow and share nutritious foods. All right, this sounds much better. Now I have something I can update the national database with and feel a lot better about it. A few tweaks here and there, and I think it's pretty good. So that's a really great resource. I think it helps people get over the hump of writing these. I think it also helps you be more concise. So that ChatGPT tool can be useful for reducing the wordiness that some of us tend to do as we write. Because we have a lot to say and we care about our work. There's a few other resources. I'm not going to dive too deep into them, but they're on the Land Grant Impact database. So you can actually find those on the resources tab on the national database site. They have an actual video that's way shorter than this webinar, and it's pretty good. In fact, if you only listen to the first 9 minutes of this 14-minute video, it pretty much sums up what I've been talking about for 55 minutes. So a great tool if you want a more concise version of this. We won't listen to it. And then they also have like a worksheet that could be helpful. So helping you think through the issues, what you did, and kind of go through the process. They have something you could even, stick up on your wall next to your computer to keep this on your mind. And they go a little bit further into it. If you're still having trouble, here's some other things to think through. So some resources there that are on that national database. Our colleagues in California and North Carolina did not know I was using their examples. I picked those out, but I wanted to give them full credit for the work they did. I'm pretty impressed that in both of theirs. Had fun reading those and kind of dissecting them as well. So thanks to our examples today. All right, that's my presentation. So I think we can dive into some Q&A if things have come up.
All right. If you have questions, you can post them in the chat. I'll pull them up for Katie, or we can do raise hand and unmute. One question that is in there now is, can you post the chat GPT link in the chat?
Yes.
And I will pull that as well as those other two links. And I will put those in the email with the recording when it is done.
Fantastic.
So I'm just going to pull that too. All right. Does anyone else have any questions?
I mentioned that it's a good time to be doing this. And, I kind of meant calendar year and thinking about as you're planning for the growing season or projects that are coming up this year, or how you can collect data and whatnot. But another key reason why it's a good time to be thinking about this is that as some of our programs and projects are being scrutinized at the federal level and state level, perhaps, I know that lobbyists and extension administration and folks are looking for these really nice, brief examples of value that we can provide. And so what I have found is, since I've started writing these, it is this wonderful go-to resource of, oh, you want an example of how our program's hitting the mark year over year? Oh, yep, I have this example. Let me send you this link. So you may have noticed on the website as you were poking around that each of those entries has some resources. It has your name, contact information, but it also has a direct copy link. So if you wanted to send someone just the key impact reports that are published online, you can actually pull those direct links, pop it into an email, pop it into a report, and suddenly you have these at your fingertips. And I have found that to be really useful because it's a nice snapshot of the work that you've been doing and the impact that it's having.
Yeah, Katie, I appreciate it. This was really great. It is, I think every year we probably think like, oh, we should do a better job at reporting impacts and things. And you get to the end of the year and go, well, oops. So having this as kind of a refresher every year would be really nice. And just reminding us how to write them, particularly if no one's ever been trained on it, this is really helpful. And I mean, I didn't know of any of those resources, so it was pretty cool to poke around in that database while you were talking as well.
Yeah, great. Press the easy button. And I love that Melissa chimed in. Thank you so much. I didn't know California would be here. Glad I used a solid example and that you were here. So thank you for writing it. You make a good point that sometimes the author for these is actually not the contact that's listed. So it sounds like you wrote it, and perhaps I think it was Christina is who I listed there as the author. she's probably your impact or communications person who submitted it. So great.
Yeah, and even, there, if our impacts aren't posted there, like you're saying, just having something to share.
Mhm.
Again, you said before during the presentation how we're busy and we assume everyone knows what we're doing, but they don't know what we're doing. And anytime we can use this to market ourselves is a really good idea.
Yeah, and don't try to do it all at once. So that's why I said, like, think about a project this year or work from last year that you want to kind of sum up into an impact report. Start small. I mean, I just started with one, and now I think I have three in there and have contributed to three others. So what I do is typically brainstorm with our team to say, okay, what's the work that we should be elevating into the National Impact Database for this year. They don't all get selected either, but it doesn't mean we don't have it nice and neat and ready, at a moment's notice to be able to share our impact. So useful to have these for sure.
So can I ask another question? I guess if anyone is on that's county coordinators, are these then being put together at the state level and then submitted? And is that how that works, I guess?
So anybody at any level in the organization can write and submit an impact report. But there's a caveat there. Your state will have typically 1 to 3 people who are the point of entry into the National Impact Database. So just because you write one and submit one to your internal team that's making determinations about who's going to be entered into the National Impact Database, it doesn't mean that it'll go into the national database. So typically every state has a process for how they determine who's elevated to the national database.
Got it.
But
Okay,
anybody,
so
and if you start looking around it and poking around at some of those, like you'll see some of them are very specific to a county issue or a county program, a pilot project. So it's definitely anybody in the organization can write and submit one.
perfect. So just at the county level, reaching out to your state coordinator to know how to move those forward if you wanted them to be moved forward.
Yep, I think that's the best idea.
Great. Any other questions? All right. Well, thanks so much, Katie. That was really awesome. It was super helpful for beginning of the year, like you mentioned. Um, and again, we'll post these recordings. So this is the registration link that you used earlier to register for this webinar. But I did want to also, again, I did put it in the chat. But if you're not aware, we do record and post all of the webinars on our YouTube channel. And they get pretty good traction. So, if you've already seen one and you want to share it out with a colleague, it's a really easy way to do it. And I know particularly with this one, sometimes you want to rewatch. So I think this one might get a few rewatches from people that are here today. And then just as a reminder as well, hopefully everyone is getting the Sprout newsletter. And if you're not, you can subscribe here. For the webinars, we post in Sprout the next webinar that's coming up and the topic. There's also a lot of other relevant, timely information for Master Gardener coordinators. So there is that. And then that is not our next webinar, that is this webinar. So our next one is in April, where we'll be having California talk about a Gardeners with Heart program. And so that one will be awesome. I will send out an email to the entire EMG listserv with this recording and all the links that were posted in the chat today to everyone. So make sure you're on that listserv. Otherwise, you can email me directly and we can get those to you. And we really appreciate you attending today. And thanks again to Katie. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.